He made me his nurse, not his wife. That realization didn't come all at once. It seeped in slowly, over late nights refilling his water glass, early mornings driving him to appointments, whispered reassurances that I'd stand by him, no matter what. I thought love meant sacrifice, so I gave everything. When Mark told me he was sick, I didn't question it. Who would? We'd been married 8 years, built a quiet, ordinary life together. I still remember the tremble in his voice when he said, "Babe, the results came back. It's bad." My chest tightened. My world tilted. I wrapped him in my arms, kissed his hair, promised we'd fight it together. Suddenly, everything became about him. His symptoms, his appointments, his medications. I cleared my schedule, cut back on work, said no to friends. Lena called one evening, her voice worried, asking why I kept canceling plans. I brushed her off, saying softly, "Mark needs me right now." She went quiet but didn't push. Weeks blurred into months. I drove Mark to endless appointments, watched him shuffle in and out of hospital doors, sat in waiting rooms with trembling hands. I memorized every prescription, every pill, every side effect. I stayed up late, Googling treatments, desperate to understand, to help, to save him. He grew paler, thinner, weaker. Or so it seemed. His voice softened. His movements slowed. His sighs lengthened. I hovered, worried, wrapping him in blankets, making his favorite meals, whispering, "I'm here, baby. We'll get through this." He smiled faintly, squeezing my hand. But cracks started to appear, tiny and hairline. He was always vague about his test results, brushing off my questions. His doctor visits often happened without me, rescheduled at the last minute. When I asked, his jaw would tighten, his eyes would darken, and he'd murmur, "Please, Clara, don't make this harder." I swallowed the doubt, telling myself I was overthinking. A woman like me should just trust, right? After all, what kind of wife questions a man fighting for his life? My heart ached. Guilt gnawed at my chest. And still, I told myself, hold on. Be patient. Stay strong. Nights became lonelier. I'd sit at the edge of the bed, watching him sleep, feeling the cold, creeping fear that I was losing him, that no matter what I did, it wouldn't be enough. My hands trembled. My breath caught. I buried my face in my palms and whispered, "Please don't leave me." But something, deep inside, stayed restless, stayed alert, stayed suspicious. And I didn't know it yet, but the truth was already unraveling. A woman like me should just trust, right? That's what I told myself every time Lena's voice echoed in my ear, urging caution. "Clara, you sure everything adds up?" she'd ask, her tone gentle but sharp. I'd wave her off, smiling tightly, whispering, "It's just been hard on both of us." But my words tasted hollow. Mark clung to me more each day. He needed me for everything. Driving, organizing pills, managing bills, even small tasks like cooking and laundry. I told myself it was normal, that sickness demanded sacrifice. I stopped going to yoga, stopped seeing friends, stopped taking calls. My whole world narrowed to him. He was grateful, or at least he pretended to be. He'd brush my cheek softly, whispering, "I don't know what I'd do without you, baby." My chest would tighten, tears would prick my eyes, and I'd kiss his forehead, murmuring, "We'll get through this, I promise." Sometimes, though, his gratitude twisted into guilt. When I asked about test results, he'd snap, "Why don't you believe me, Clara?" When I questioned a skipped appointment, his eyes would darken, his shoulders tensing. "I'm the one sick here. Can't you just support me?" I started feeling like I was walking on eggshells. Every conversation became a careful dance between concern and trust, between love and suspicion. I wanted to ask more, dig deeper, demand answers. But each time I told myself, be kind, be patient, don't break the fragile peace. At night, I lay awake, watching the rise and fall of his chest. Feeling my own heart hammering, I whispered silent prayers into the dark, asking for strength, for healing, for clarity. I dreamed of a future where he'd recover, where we'd rebuild, where all of this would fade like a bad memory. During the day, I packed lunches for his hospital visits, drove him quietly, waited in the car or in the lobby. Sometimes he'd emerge quickly, smiling faintly, saying, "Went faster than expected." My stomach would not, but I'd smile back, pushing the doubts down. Lena kept calling, kept asking, kept worrying. "Clara, let me come over. Let me help." I thanked her softly, promising, "I'm okay." But I wasn't. I was exhausted, lonely, crumbling. My world was shrinking, and I couldn't remember when I'd last felt like myself. Mark grew softer, quieter, almost theatrical in his exhaustion. He'd sigh dramatically, leaning heavily on me, whispering, "You're the only thing keeping me going." I'd wrap my arms around him, feeling both fierce love and gnawing fear. But behind the fear, deep down, a tiny flickering voice whispered, "Something isn't right." He lied, and I sacrificed everything. That truth didn't hit me all at once. It crept in slowly, like shadows lengthening at the edges of my mind. I was so exhausted I couldn't tell if my doubts were real or just the side effects of living. On high alert, always worried about his next appointment, his next symptom, his next need. Mark began pulling away even as he leaned on me more. Some days, he wouldn't let me come into the doctor's office, insisting, "It's just routine, babe. You don't need to waste your time sitting there." My stomach tightened when he said it, but I nodded, too tired to argue. Other days, I'd see him on his phone late at night, turning away slightly when I came into the room. I told myself it was private, maybe a friend checking in, maybe a support group. But the flicker of guilt in his eyes made my chest squeeze painfully. Lena kept texting, her concern turning sharper. "Clara, seriously, what hospital is he even going to? Do you know his doctor's name?" I brushed her off again, but her words left a mark. I realized, with a sick twist, that I didn't know. Not really. Mark's medication routine was a blur of bottles and pills, but he always managed it himself, brushing me off if I offered. "You've done enough, baby," he'd murmur, kissing my forehead. But why didn't he want me involved? Why were there always gaps I couldn't fill? One night, I sat on the couch, holding one of his bottles, staring at the label, the dosage, the instructions. My fingers trembled. I wasn't a doctor. What did I know? But I knew one thing. None of this felt right anymore. I stayed up that night, scrolling through old photos, remembering the man I'd married. He'd been so confident, so magnetic, so sure of himself. Now, he was fragile, dependent, or so, he claimed. My heart twisted painfully. Had I lost him to illness, or to something else? In the morning, I watched him from the doorway as he carefully arranged his pills on the table. My stomach lurched when I saw how quickly he pocketed some bottles, how casually he swept others into the trash. My mouth went dry. My skin prickled. I wanted to confront him, but my voice stuck in my throat. He was sick, wasn't he? Could I really accuse a sick man of lying? My chest ached, guilt surging, love tangling with suspicion, until I couldn't tell one from the other. But that little voice inside me, the one I'd been ignoring for months, kept whispering, "Look closer. And finally one night I did. This wasn't love. This was control. That realization slammed into me the night I finally let myself search. Mark was in the shower, steam filling the bathroom, his humming faint behind the door. My hands trembled as I crept into the cabinet, where he kept his medications lined up neatly, bottle after bottle. One by one, I opened them and found them empty. Every single one. My breath hitched, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. Pills that should have been carefully rationed were gone, or worse, had never been there. My fingers shook as I turned the bottles, reading labels that made no sense, instructions that didn't match what he'd claimed. I sat on the bathroom floor, gripping the bottles, tears burning behind my eyes. My mind raced through every late night pharmacy trip, every carefully wrapped pill pack, every whispered, "Thank you for helping me, baby." He'd let me carry the weight, let me sacrifice, let me believe, and it was all a lie. The shower turned off. Panic surged through me. I scrambled to put the bottles back, slipping out of the room just in time. My chest heaved, my hands clutching the countertop as I tried to steady my breathing. Mark walked out casually, toweling his hair, smiling faintly. "You okay, babe?" I forced a tight smile, my stomach churning. "Yeah, just tired," I murmured. He kissed my forehead, humming, softly, completely unaware that the ground had shifted under my feet. I watched him move through the room, every step now feeling surreal, every smile laced with betrayal. The next day, I sat in my car outside Dr. Patel's office, staring at the door I'd never been allowed to enter. My fingers hovered over my phone, heart hammering, breath shallow. I finally gathered the nerve to call. "Hi, I'm Mark's wife. Could I check on something?" The receptionist's voice was polite but puzzled. "Ma'am, we don't have a Mark under our care." My mouth went dry. My chest tightened painfully. I thanked her softly, hung up, and sat frozen, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Shock flooded me, wave after wave, crashing into my chest. Every appointment had been fake. Every excuse, every symptom, every sigh. Fake. My life for the past year had been built on lies, on gaslighting, on carefully crafted manipulation. I drove home slowly, my mind spinning. How could he? Why? What was the point of all this? Money? Attention? Control? My hands shook on the wheel. I wanted to scream, to sob, to collapse. But under the heartbreak, something colder began to rise. I wasn't just broken. I was angry. They underestimated the woman waking up. That's all I could think as I sat at the kitchen table that night, staring at the man I had once promised forever to. Mark laughed softly at a show on TV, relaxed, content, completely unaware that I knew everything now. My hands clenched under the table, nails digging into my palms, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear. I wanted to confront him right then, but something in me froze. I needed to understand more. I needed to gather every piece. I needed to know what else he'd lied about, because if he could fake an illness, what else was he capable of? I reached out to Lena late that night, my fingers shaking as I texted, "You were right. I think he's been lying." She called instantly, her voice sharp, protective. "Clara, I'm coming over." But I stopped her. "Not yet," I whispered. "I need to figure this out first." Over the next few days, I watched Mark like a scientist observing a test subject. I noticed how easily he slipped into his role, the tired sighs, the quiet groans, the exaggerated winces when I was near. But when he thought I wasn't looking, the mask dropped. His steps were lighter, his mood lifted. The manipulation ran deeper than I'd ever realized. Every time I tried to pull away, he pulled me back in. A sudden flare-up, a last-minute panic, a whispered, "Please, baby, I need you." And I had always run to him. I started noticing the little clues I'd missed before. The missed appointments, the cash withdrawals, the unexplained hours away. My chest ached, my stomach churned, but beneath the grief, the anger sharpened. He'd built his entire safety net on my love. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, planning. I wasn't going to scream or break things. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me shattered. No, I was going to gather everything. I was going to confront him with calm, deliberate truth. Lena checked in constantly, her voice fierce but worried. "Clara, don't let him twist this. You know what he's capable of." I nodded, whispering, "I know, I see it now." My hands trembled, but my mind stayed clear. I pulled old receipts, credit card records, phone logs. I dug through everything, every little piece of his carefully constructed lie, and with each discovery, my resolve hardened. He thought I was still asleep in this nightmare, but I was wide awake. That was the moment everything changed. It wasn't one big dramatic scene. It was me, sitting quietly on the bedroom floor, surrounded by bills, pill bottles, appointment cards, and credit statements, piecing together the truth. Every thread, I pulled led to another empty space, another hole in the story, another lie exposed. Mark wasn't sick. He never had been. He was perfectly healthy, perfectly calculated, perfectly manipulative. He'd gaslighted me into rearranging my life, giving up my career, isolating from friends, and wrapping myself entirely around his false illness. My hands trembled as I gripped the papers tighter. I realized I didn't even know the man I was, married to. I knew the role he played, the mask he wore, the stories he told. But the real Mark? That was someone darker. Someone who fed off sympathy, off control, off the power he held over me. My stomach twisted, nausea rising, but I forced myself to keep going. I called Dr. Patel's office again, asking calmly if they could confirm any past appointments. The polite receptionist, puzzled, explained again. "Ma'am, we have no records for your husband." My heart pounded, my throat tightened, but I thanked her softly and hung up. Proof. More proof. Lena came over that night, wrapping me in her arms, whispering fiercely, "I'm so proud of you." I clung to her, tears brimming, but my voice stayed steady. "I need to end this, Lena," I murmured. "I need him to know I know. We planned it carefully." I gathered the evidence, the empty pill bottles, the fake appointment cards, the missing money. I printed everything, laid it out calmly, methodically. This wasn't going to be an emotional explosion. This was going to be controlled exposure. Mark had no idea. That evening, he smiled across the table, thanking me softly for dinner, sighing dramatically as he rubbed his temples. My stomach churned, but I smiled faintly, nodding. I just smiled, because he had no idea. That night, I slipped the folder onto his side of the bed, neatly stacked, waiting for him. When he emerged from the shower, humming softly, towel around his waist, his eyes fell on it. He froze. I sat calmly at the edge of the bed, my heart thudding but my voice soft. "We need to talk, Mark." His face paled, his mouth opened slightly, searching for a smile, for a lie, for a lifeline. But this time, I wasn't giving him one. This time, I was taking back my power. I just smiled, because he had no idea. Mark stood frozen, his towel clutched tightly, his eyes darting between me and the folder on the bed. His lips parted like he was about to laugh, about to charm his way out. But the smile didn't come. I watched the realization flicker across his face, the pale ripple of panic as he sensed the shift. "Clara, baby, what's this?" he murmured, his voice soft, careful, rehearsed. I tilted my head slightly, the faintest smile curling at the corner of my mouth. "You tell me, Mark," I whispered. "I've been waiting to hear your version." His jaw tensed. His eyes flicked to the folder again, calculating. He reached for it, flipping through the papers quickly. The empty pill bottles, the fake appointment slips, the bank statements. His hands shook. "Clara, I can explain," he began, his voice cracking. I let out a soft, almost amused breath. "I'm sure you can, but don't bother." For once, the power sat fully in my hands. I felt it hum under my skin, a slow rising heat, not frantic or desperate, controlled. Sharp, steady. He had underestimated me, the quiet wife, the caregiver, the woman too busy carrying his burdens to ever question him. But not anymore. Mark sank onto the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he whispered. My smile sharpened. "No, you just meant to manipulate me, gaslight me, betray me. You just meant to strip me of everything I had and call it love." He looked up sharply, eyes wide, desperate. "Clara, please, we can fix this." I shook my head slowly, the steel in my voice ringing clear. "No, Mark, you can fix this. I'm done carrying anything for you." I stood, smoothing my dress, my heart pounding but my spine straight. Lena waited just outside, her car running. I glanced back at him once, the man who had taken so much from me, and I felt the last remnants of my old life slide away. "I'll be in touch with the lawyer," I murmured softly. "Don't call me." His mouth opened, a plea rising, but I turned calmly, walking out the door, down the steps, into the cool night air where Lena waited with fierce, teary eyes. The air hit my skin like a slap, sharp, clean, electric. My hands trembled slightly as I climbed into the car, but I smiled, feeling the tightness in my chest ease for the first time in months, because I had walked away, and I had taken all the power with me. He faked his illness. I reclaimed my life. That's the simplest way I can explain it now, sitting on Lena's couch days later, wrapped in a blanket, a cup of tea warming my hands. The house was quiet except for the occasional hum of the fridge, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I could actually hear myself think. I had left him. I had walked out. No screaming, no chaos, no dramatic fight. Just the cold, sharp delivery of truth. And that truth shattered everything he had built. He texted, of course, he called. He left voicemails, begging, apologizing, spinning a dozen versions of the story. But I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I sat with Lena, our knees tucked under us, her hand clasped tightly around mine. "You're free," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. I let out a shaky breath, a small, tired laugh bubbling up. "I am," I whispered back. And I felt it. I looked around the small, cozy room. No reminders of Mark, no bottles to sort, no appointments to manage, no lies to untangle. Just me and the woman I was, slowly, painfully, but surely becoming again. There were still moments when the grief hit, sharp and bitter. I'd remember his smile, his soft voice, the man I thought I knew. I'd remember the way I had loved him, fiercely, completely, blindly. And I'd feel the old ache pulse in my chest. But under it, something stronger always rose. Clarity. Realized now that love doesn't mean losing yourself. Love doesn't mean shrinking or sacrificing until you disappear. Love doesn't mean being gaslighted, manipulated, drained dry. Love, real love, lifts, and Mark had only ever pulled me under. I sat by the window one night, watching the stars flicker above, feeling the cool glass under my fingertips. My heart still beat fast sometimes. My mind still raced. But I knew, deep down, that I had survived. The hardest part, because he had lied. He had betrayed. He had played me like a puppet. But I had walked away. And in doing so, I had reclaimed every shattered piece of myself. This wasn't the ending I'd imagined. It was something better.